There isn't a frame of reference. There are none to be found. You can of course conjure them up by abstracting reality in order to calculate or create some instrumentation to help facilitate the taking of a record. But what the measurement means applies as much to the nature of the conjuring act than it does to any insight into the nature of reality. There is, however, perceptual structure, and our subjective interrogation of the real in the form of generated phenomena. The phenomena occur to us and not our instrumentation. Does subjective experience actually trump calculation and measurement? Of course it does. The trick is to understand how and why. Phenomenal field, incorporating our presentation of vision, isn't anchored by what's out there in the world, it's anchored by the perceptual structure the sentient being generates. We see the world in relation to ourselves. What other is there? A virtual or artificial reality taking place within a frame? Our awareness of the world manifests within perceptual structure as an extension of the dynamical system running through all things, including us. There's a universality of connection involved here that doesn't run through the content of the records made by our instrumentation, because those instruments record what they were designed to, and not what's there to be encountered. As they were not designed to account for, they do not encounter. The nature of the universal dynamic runs at a deeper level to that proffered by a device such as a camera or a microphone or even a radio telescope. So what do their records mean? The deeper, more fundamental nature of experiential reality impregnates our very makeup as complex biological systems. It's through this that we develop our relationship with the real. I find it difficult to imagine that there could be anything more fundamental than this. But it must then follow that there is no more significant absence than this in our current record-making and models. Progress will only be made with a change in ontology away from third-party observation to experiential reality and the primacy of perception. This primacy is not linked to accuracy of measurement, but to the phenomenology. It's true, of course, that it's possible to conceive of or conceptualize about a notional frame of reference or inertial frame, and through that consider the world. This notional vantage assumes a situation where the world is there to be prodded at all scales, measured or projected or represented within the confines of the frame of reference. However, the very potential to form that vista develops out from subjective awareness. The approach rests on a deduction, and so it's conceptual in nature. The benefit of such terms of engagement to our understanding of the nature of reality carries with it inherent limitations. The approach has a threshold of usefulness, and reliance upon it will ultimately constrain what can be taken from the situation under investigation, even if what manifests at its outer limits clearly presents the unreality of the discoveries tabled. For believers, these conditioned unrealities are positioned as reality because they are certain. They will be held in position not by measurement but by the belief system or ontology that gave rise to the notion of measurement, presenting a hall of mirrors. The approach lacks a critical distinction, the distinction between reality and the real, where reality is the relationship we, as biological systems, form with the real. It is here that the nature of reality is to be encountered. Many artists have clearly retracted from the geometry of picture space with its frames of reference in pursuit of direct engagement and what that reveals to us. Picasso danced within its graces. These elegant and teasing manifestations drive from perceptual engagement, but they are a bit incomplete. The painting fails to articulate a strategy for depicting implicit spatial awareness. The three dancers also resides within a picture frame or border, even if the format of the content challenges the very notion. But in general, visual art bottomed out the constraints of pictorial geometry a long while ago and broke loose. Science must learn to do likewise, or stall within the limits prescribed for it by its adopted ontology, a situation requiring the acceptance of paradoxes as they're generated by repeated, if not relentless, application of what proves to be an inappropriate ontology. Context is everything, but how do we effortlessly perform the task of spatial contextualization? We're not really fully conscious of context, and certainly not of its formation. Indeed, it presents or unfolds spatial saliency, as opposed to forming it. Implicit spatial salience, gained directly from the real setting, occurs to us without the requirement for consideration. We don't have to turn central vision onto each area of visual field in some sequence to comprehend the generality. And indeed, if we made the attempt, the order of spatial data being sought would be lost from the areas attended to. We can't chase it down through the phenomenon. What's gleaned on a holistic basis, through the dorsal stream, subconsciously presents, away from our primary form of attention. However, there's no paradox in the scenario where implicit spatial saliency rendered out in a representation is attended to using both pathways, either holistically or area by area. Peripheral vision isn't peripheral. It proffers implicit spatial awareness, and it's this context that grounds experiential reality. The point being that with vision space we now have some computational understanding relating to the presentation of this context, and this has to proffer a significant lead in our attempts to understand awareness in general and the nature of reality. Understanding the twilight world should suggest a good deal about how the universal dynamical system extends to our sense organs and through our perceptual structure. In my version of the three dancers, I plot, and to some extent overlay, an interrogation trajectory between two saccades moving from one head to another and then to the vase. Given the incremental condensation towards the perimeter of contextual vision, a situation that ensures a discrepancy between the actual location of objects in real space and their perceived location in perceptual space, a change of fixation must trigger a general trajectory for the saccadic eye movement towards the new point of interest or target area in phenomenal field, but then break off to allow for the effect of condensation to be accounted for or accommodated. This suggests that contextual holistic attention must hand over to the processes governing explicit attention. Different regions of the brain involving both visual processing systems must be employed within a saccade. The picture never forms, because in experiential terms they never do, but an image of the encounter endures. I should perhaps make clear that this painting doesn't reference any perceived movement on behalf of the dancers. They remain static. This is about subjective eye movement within phenomenal field, and then how we, as the system's arbiter, relate the structure of the phenomenon to the real. In other words, how we use the phenomenon to navigate our environment. So back to Picasso's Three Dancers. It's always been one of my favourite paintings as it clearly plays with our perceptual system while at the same time defying standard aesthetic protocols. I can sense perturbations from the pictorial norm, but they play into sensory perception and not away from it. This sort of departure from pictorial geometry also appears in my painting. Their manifestations are not a sign of abstraction from reality. They deepen our understanding of it, because they actually occur to us and help us to generate the saliency of vision. They're part of us forming our relationship with the real, artifacts of perceptual process. In my view, Picasso never abstracted from the experiential, he helped to penetrate it. It's the picture of the scene, set out in accordance with optical projection, or central perspective, that actually satisfies the label abstract. And finally, the rectangle of the stretcher holding the canvas in my rendition of the Three Dancers is entirely irrelevant with respect to the image presenting on its surface. The structure of the image is in no way contingent upon the material structure of the stretcher supporting the canvas on which it's drawn. They are unrelated, and this is significant. There isn't a frame of reference here. Just imagine the dances to come as we commune and re-engage in the magic of experiential encounter, delighting in the relationship each of us forms with the real, and what the terms of such an entanglement reveals about the nature of reality. Just imagine what perceptual technologies founded on experiential ontology will bring forth.